My wife announced, "We're opening the marriage, but you're staying closed." Cheating wife. The buzz of his phone barely registered as Mark prepared dinner, chopping vegetables with practiced precision. 3 years with Chloe had settled into comfortable routine, him handling expenses while she pursued her creative ambitions, rent-free in his downtown apartment. The phone buzzed again. He wiped his hands, expecting her usual running late message. Instead, "We need to talk about opening our relationship." His knife clattered against the cutting board, opening their relationship. A second message appeared, "I need to explore my sexuality, but just me, you'd stay the same." Mark stared at the screen, pulse hammering in his temples. The sizzling pan began to smoke behind him. Forgotten. 3 years of support, of building a life together, reduced to a unilateral declaration via text message. How was he supposed to respond to that? Mark woke before the alarm, as usual. Beside him, Chloe slept deeply, her blonde hair splayed across his pillow. He silenced the alarm before it could disturb her and slipped quietly from bed. The morning routine had become second nature after 3 years together. He showered quickly, started the coffee, and unloaded the dishwasher he'd filled last night. A small pile of Chloe's art supplies had migrated from her workspace to the kitchen counter. He organized them neatly before preparing breakfast. "Is that coffee?" Chloe appeared in the doorway, stretching languorously in her sleep shirt, actually his old university t-shirt. "Fresh pot, eggs and toast, too." Mark slid a plate across the counter. "You're too good to me." She kissed his cheek, then checked her phone. "My exhibition planning meeting got moved up. Can I use your card for the space deposit today? I'll pay you back after the show sells." "Of course." It was the third loan this month, but her artwork was her passion. "I paid the internet bill yesterday, by the way. You're the best." She took a single bite of toast. "I've got to run, meeting Lisa for coffee before the gallery." As the door closed behind her, Mark washed her barely touched breakfast plate and added it to his mental tally of small imbalances he tried not to notice. The spreadsheet on Mark's monitor blurred as his attention drifted. His financial consulting firm valued his precision, but today his thoughts kept returning to Chloe. Last night, she'd barely looked up from her phone when he'd arrived home, third time this week. When had their conversations dwindled to logistics about bills and schedules? His phone buzzed with a text. "Networking dinner tonight with potential gallery contacts. Don't wait up." Hearts. Mark sighed and typed a supportive response. Her career needed these connections. Still, another evening alone hadn't been what he'd planned. Trouble in paradise? His colleague David stopped by his desk, nodding at the phone. "Just schedule changes." Mark slipped the phone away, uncomfortable with the knowing look in David's eyes. "Rachel and I had that phase before we split. All phone, no talk." Mark frowned. "It's not like that." Chloe's focused on her career. "Sure, man." David's skepticism hung in the air as he walked away. Returning to his spreadsheet, Mark couldn't help cataloging other changes. Chloe's new passwords on her devices, her vague descriptions of where she'd been, her decreasing physical affection. Each observation triggered a flicker of anxiety he immediately suppressed. She was just busy growing. Artists needed space. But as he finished his workday, a disquieting thought surfaced. When had he started making excuses for her behavior? Mark moved around the kitchen with quiet satisfaction, preparing a pasta dish Chloe particularly enjoyed. After a week of minimal connection, he'd decided on a proper dinner, some wine, real conversation. The apartment felt emptier these days, despite containing more of her things than ever. Supplies, half-finished projects, clothes draped over furniture. He'd given her the second bedroom as a studio when she'd moved in, rent-free. His support was an investment in their future together. He checked his watch. She'd be home soon. His phone lit up with her name and he smiled. Maybe she was letting him know she was on her way. "Can you talk? Need to discuss something important." He wiped his hands, wondering if the gallery had made an offer on her work. Of course. Are you on your way home? Making your favorite pasta? Three dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. His pulse quickened inexplicably. I've been doing a lot of thinking about us. I love you, but I'm not fulfilled. I want to open our relationship. The wooden spoon slipped from his fingers, clattering against the stovetop. Another message appeared. Just for me, though. I need to explore my sexuality with others. You would stay exclusive to me. Mark stared at the screen, unable to process the words. The sauce began to burn, filling the kitchen with acrid smoke. But he couldn't move, couldn't look away from the message that had just shattered everything he thought they were building. One-sided. She wanted their relationship to be one-sided. The phone buzzed again. Can I take your silence as a yes? Can I take your silence as a yes? Mark finally turned off the burner, the acrid smell of burnt tomato sauce filling the kitchen. He stared at his phone, reading Chloe's messages again to make sure he hadn't misunderstood. I need to process this, he typed, then deleted it. We should talk in person, he wrote instead. The front door opened. Hey, what's burning? Chloe's voice called from the entryway. She appeared in the kitchen doorway, dressed in a new outfit he hadn't seen before. I was just down the street when I texted. Thought we could talk face to face. Mark turned to face her, phone still in hand. Talk about how you want to sleep with other people while I stay faithful to you. She settled onto a bar stool, maintaining distance between them. That sounds harsh when you put it like that. How would you put it? I'm on a journey of self-discovery, she said, her voice taking on the passionate tone she used when discussing her art. I feel constrained by traditional relationship structures. This isn't about rejecting you. It's about expanding myself by sleeping with other people, by exploring connections I've been curious about. She leaned forward. You've always supported my growth, Mark. This is just another form of that. But you don't want me to have the same freedom. Your needs are different. You've never expressed interest in other people. She reached for his hand across the counter. He pulled back. This could make our relationship stronger. More honest. More honest, he repeated, the word feeling hollow. I need this, Mark. I felt suffocated lately. He looked around their apartment, his apartment technically, filled with everything she needed. When do you want to start? So you're okay with it? Her eyes brightened. I didn't say that. But even as he spoke, he knew he was already considering it. 3 years of love and shared dreams. Was he ready to lose that? I need time to think. Of course. She slid off the bar stool. Take all the time you need. I love you, Mark. This doesn't change that. But as she walked away, Mark knew everything had already changed. Long after Chloe had gone to bed, Mark sat in the dim light of his laptop. The burnt dinner remained untouched, his appetite gone. Instead, he found himself diving into article after article about open relationships. Successful non-monogamy requires comprehensive consent from all parties. Read one relationship therapist's blog. Without mutual enthusiasm, it's a recipe for disaster. Another site emphasized ethical non-monogamy is built on transparency, honesty, and respect for boundaries. One-sided arrangements rarely succeed. Mark scrolled through dozens of personal accounts. Some described flourishing open relationships, but these invariably featured extensive communication, clear agreements, and reciprocal freedoms. He couldn't find a single success story that resembled what Chloe had proposed. A forum discussion caught his attention. My girlfriend wanted an open relationship just for her. I agreed because I was afraid of losing her. 6 months later, she left me for someone she met during her exploration. I wish I'd recognized the red flag. The responses were unanimous. That wasn't an open relationship. It was permission to cheat. Mark closed his eyes, the screen's glow burning against his eyelids. The knot in his stomach tightened as clarity began to replace confusion. What Chloe wanted wasn't a mutual growth opportunity. It was a fundamental renegotiation of their relationship on unequal terms. He opened their text history, noticing how her messages had grown increasingly vague about her whereabouts over recent weeks. The last time she'd initiated intimacy between them had been, he couldn't even remember. A thought surfaced that he'd been suppressing. What if she wasn't asking permission to start exploring, but for retroactive approval of what she'd already begun? They met at a cafe the following afternoon, neutral territory that Mark had suggested. Chloe arrived 15 minutes late, flustered and apologetic. Sorry, got caught up with Lisa discussing the exhibition. She settled across from him, her expression hopeful. Have you had time to think? Mark nodded, hands wrapped around his coffee mug. I've been doing some research on open relationships. Research? She laughed lightly, always the analyst. I wanted to understand what makes them work. He met her eyes directly. Everything I found emphasizes mutual consent, equal freedom and complete honesty. Chloe shifted in her seat. Everyone's relationship is different. We need to find what works for us. For us or for you. Don't be like that. She reached for his hand. I'm trying to be honest about my needs. I appreciate honesty, Mark said carefully. So I need to ask you something. He slid his phone across the table, open to a social media post from the previous week. One of Lisa's photos, showing Chloe with her arm around a man Mark had never seen, looking decidedly more than friendly. Is this what prompted your sudden interest in opening our relationship? Chloe's face flushed. You're checking up on me? Lisa tagged you. It showed up in my feed. He's just someone from the art community. Her eyes darted away. Nothing's happened. Yet, Mark added quietly, this is exactly why I wanted to have this conversation, she said, voice rising, so I wouldn't have to sneak around or feel guilty about natural attractions. So you've already decided. I haven't acted on anything, she insisted, but her expression betrayed her. Mark felt something shift inside him, pain transforming into a strange, calm clarity. How long, Chloe? How long what? How long have you been planning this? Or has something already started? She stared at her untouched coffee. We met 3 weeks ago. We've just talked. Mostly. Maybe flirted a little. A pause. He kissed me once. The admission hung between them, confirming what Mark had already begun to suspect. She hadn't been asking for his consent. She'd been seeking his permission for what she'd already set in motion. 2 days after Chloe's confession, Mark suggested meeting at Rosetta's, an Italian bistro equidistant from both their workplaces. He arrived early, selecting a corner table that offered privacy without isolation. The restaurant's ambient noise would provide a buffer for what promised to be a difficult conversation. Chloe arrived looking polished and hopeful, sliding into the seat across from him. Thanks for suggesting this, she said, unfolding her napkin. I've been worried about us. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Mark began, after they'd ordered. If we're going to try this, and I'm not saying I've decided yet, we need clear boundaries. Chloe nodded eagerly. Of course, whatever makes you comfortable. First, complete honesty about who you're seeing and when. No surprises like finding out on social media. Absolutely. I want this to be above board. Second, regular check-ins about how we're both feeling. That makes sense. She reached for his hand across the table. This time, he didn't pull away. Third, safety protocols, regular testing, protection always. She winced slightly, but nodded. Of course. And fourth, this is important, Chloe, a two-way door. If either of us decides this isn't working, we close the relationship again and reassess. So it might not be permanent? Her enthusiasm dimmed noticeably. Nothing in life is guaranteed. Isn't that what this is about? Exploration without certainty? She seemed to consider this, then smiled. You're right. I'm just glad you're willing to try. I really do love you, Mark. I want to believe that. He squeezed her hand. One more thing. I need time before this starts. A couple weeks to adjust to the idea. Of course, she agreed quickly. Whatever you need. As they finished their meal, Mark felt cautiously optimistic. Maybe they could navigate this together. Maybe her honesty, however painful, was the foundation for something stronger. "So we have an agreement?" he asked as they prepared to leave. "Absolutely," she said, leaning in to kiss him. "I promise this will bring us closer, not push us apart." Mark wanted desperately to believe her. The following weeks brought an unexpected calm to their relationship. Chloe was more attentive than she'd been in months, preparing dinner twice, initiating physical affection, even accompanying Mark to a work function she would typically have avoided. "You seem happier," his colleague David remarked during the company gathering. "Things better at home?" "We're working through it," Mark replied, watching Chloe charm a group of his coworkers across the room. Communication helps. At home, they fell into a rhythm that felt almost like their early days together. Shared breakfasts, texts during the day, evening walks through the neighborhood. Chloe even reorganized her art supplies that had colonized their shared spaces. "See," she said one evening as they sat together on the sofa, her head on his shoulder. "We're stronger when we're honest with each other." Mark nodded, trying to ignore the persistent knot in his stomach, because despite the surface improvements, subtle inconsistencies emerged. Chloe's phone, once casually left around the apartment, was now permanently attached to her hand or tucked away. Notifications appeared that she quickly dismissed. Her gallery meetings increased in frequency, often running late into the evening. "The exhibition is coming together," she explained when he asked about her schedule. "Everyone's putting in extra hours." One Saturday morning, Mark discovered an unfamiliar receipt in her jacket pocket while doing laundry. Dinner for two at an upscale restaurant on an evening she'd claimed to be working late at the gallery. "Oh, Lisa and I grabbed a bite," she explained when he mentioned it casually. "I forgot to tell you." He nodded and let it drop, but later that day saw her texting someone saved in her contacts simply as a. That night, while Chloe slept beside him, Mark stared at the ceiling and admitted to himself what he'd been trying to deny. Their agreement about waiting hadn't been honored. The improved relationship was merely a performance, one designed to keep him complacent while she pursued what she truly wanted. Mark hadn't planned to look. He still wanted to believe in Chloe's promises, despite mounting evidence to the contrary. But when her laptop chimed with an email notification while she was in the shower, the preview that flashed across the screen caught his attention. Financial planning for next steps. He hesitated, his sense of privacy warring with growing suspicion. The shower continued running. He moved to the desk and opened the email thread. The message was from someone named Alex. The mysterious A from her contacts, he realized. As he scanned the exchange, his stomach clenched. "Once you've secured the apartment, we should discuss how to transition your finances," Alex had written. "You mentioned your boyfriend handles most of the bills now." Scrolling up, he found Chloe's previous message. "I'm still figuring out how to approach the money situation. Mark pays for everything right now. Rent, utilities, my phone, even most of my art supplies. I need to maintain that support while I establish myself independently." Alex's response was practical. "Smart to keep those benefits while you explore your options. No need to disrupt your financial situation until you're certain about us." Mark sat perfectly still, the words burning into his mind. This wasn't just about sexual exploration. Chloe was planning an exit strategy while ensuring his continued financial support during her transition. Another email from Alex found a great sublease in Westside. "Perfect for your studio needs, and we'd be just 10 minutes apart. Let me know when you want to tour it." Chloe's enthusiastic reply sounds perfect. "Mark will never need to know about it until I'm ready to make the full move." The shower stopped. Mark quickly closed the laptop and moved away from the desk, his mind racing. The surface harmony, the renewed affection, all tactics to maintain his support while she established her new life. He'd been right to research open relationships, but wrong about what Chloe truly wanted. This wasn't about expanding their relationship. It was about a carefully managed extraction from it with his unwitting financial assistance. Mark waited until Chloe emerged from the shower, then stood in the living room with her laptop open on the coffee table. We need to talk, he said, his voice surprisingly steady, despite the storm inside. She approached cautiously, wrapped in her bathrobe, hair dripping onto her shoulders. Her eyes darted to the open laptop, then widened in recognition. You went through my emails? Anger flashed across her face. That's an invasion of privacy. Is that really what you want to focus on right now? Mark gestured to the screen. Not the fact that you're planning to move in with Alex while keeping me in the dark so I can continue paying your bills. Chloe crossed her arms. You're taking things out of context. Explain the context then. Help me understand how Mark will never need to know fits into our agreement about honesty. She sighed, sinking into the armchair across from him. It's complicated. I'm exploring options while I finance your exploration. You've always supported my dreams, she countered. You said you wanted me to find fulfillment. By deceiving me? By using me? Mark's careful composure began to crack. Did you ever intend to honor our agreement about waiting before seeing other people? I needed to know if there was something real with Alex before disrupting everything. So, you've been sleeping with him? She didn't deny it. It just happened. We connected on a deeper level. While I've been here trying to make our relationship work, paying for everything, believing your lies. Mark's voice rose despite his efforts to control it. Do you have any idea what that feels like? You're making me sound calculating, she protested. I'm just trying to figure out my life. At my expense? The dam broke. 3 years, Chloe. 3 years of supporting you, believing in us, and you were planning your exit strategy behind my back. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. The emails spell it out perfectly. You want to keep me paying while you establish yourself with someone else. She stood, pulling her robe tighter. You're twisting everything. I care about you, but I need space to figure things out. Space in an apartment I'm unknowingly financing? Mark shook his head, a hollow laugh escaping. God, I've been such a fool. If you'd agreed to an open relationship from the start, this isn't about an open relationship. This is about honesty and respect, neither of which you've shown me. Chloe's expression hardened. Maybe if you weren't so controlling about money, I wouldn't need to be strategic. The accusations stunned him into momentary silence. Controlling? I've paid for everything without complaint. I've supported your art career. He stopped, recognizing the futility. You know what? You're right. This is my fault for not seeing who you really are. He closed the laptop and walked toward the door. Where are you going? She called after him. Somewhere to think. Alone. He paused at the threshold. Don't wait up. The night embraced Mark as he walked without destination, his mind replaying the confrontation on endless loop. Downtown lights blurred through unshed tears as he passed couples holding hands, laughing, sharing the connection he'd thought he had with Chloe. Hours later, exhausted, he found himself in a hotel room, sterile and impersonal, a fitting reflection of his emotional state. He sat on the edge of the bed, finally allowing the full weight of betrayal to crush him. Everything he'd believed about their relationship had been a construction, a narrative he'd wanted to believe. The signs had been there from the beginning. Her casual disregard for his contributions, her taking without reciprocating, her increasing distance. He moved to the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face. The mirror reflected a stranger, hollow-eyed, diminished. What kind of person had he become that someone could use him so callously? Had he been so desperate for love that he'd allowed himself to be exploited? Had his generosity been a form of self-sabotage, a way to buy affection he hadn't felt worthy of earning honestly? The questions hammered at him as he paced the small room. He'd built his identity around being the supportive partner, the stable provider. Who was he now that this foundation had crumbled? Mark collapsed onto the bathroom floor, back against the cold tile wall. Memories assaulted him, moments he'd cherished now tainted with doubt. Had she ever truly loved him? Had anything between them been real? The worst pain came not from Chloe's betrayal, but from his own complicity. He'd ignored warning signs, rationalized imbalances, accepted scraps of affection as though they were feasts. He'd allowed himself to be diminished. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, curled on the hotel bed fully clothed, Mark confronted the emptiness at his core. He'd invested everything in someone who had seen him as a resource rather than a person. The realization brought not just pain, but a profound spiritual crisis. If he could be so wrong about someone he loved, what else had he misunderstood about himself and the world? In the darkest hour, a question formed that he'd never allowed himself to ask. What if being alone was better than being with someone who didn't truly see him? Morning light filtered through thin hotel curtains, waking Mark from fitful sleep. His phone showed multiple missed calls and texts from Chloe, ranging from angry, "How dare you walk out during a discussion," to conciliatory, "Please come home so we can talk this through." He set the phone aside without responding. After a shower and coffee from the lobby, Mark returned to the apartment, uncertain what he would find. Chloe was in the kitchen, preparing breakfast as though nothing had happened. "There you are," she said brightly. "I was worried." Mark didn't answer, setting his keys on the counter and observing her with new eyes. She moved around the space he paid for, using appliances he'd purchased, wearing clothes he'd funded, all while planning her departure. "I made your favorite omelet," she continued, sliding a plate across the counter. "I thought we could talk calmly about everything." "What's there to talk about?" he asked quietly. "Us, our future." She pushed the plate closer. "I know you're upset about the emails, but they were just exploratory conversations. Nothing's decided." Mark watched as she poured herself coffee in the mug he'd given her last Christmas, noticed how she checked her phone when it buzzed, probably Alex, and observed the practiced smile she offered him. The performance was flawless, honed by years of getting what she wanted from him. Something shifted inside him then, not with the violent force of last night's breakdown, but with the quiet certainty of dawn breaking. This wasn't love. It had never been love. Love required mutual respect, reciprocity, honesty, all the things their relationship had lacked. "What are you thinking?" she asked, noticing his silence. "I'm thinking about what I deserve," he answered simply. Her expression flickered with uncertainty. "What do you mean?" "I deserve someone who values me for who I am, not what I provide." The words emerged with a clarity that surprised him. "I deserve honesty, reciprocity, respect." "I respect you," she protested. "No, Chloe, you don't." He spoke without anger now, just quiet conviction. "And I haven't respected myself either, but that's going to change." He didn't elaborate, didn't need to yet. The knowledge that had formed during his night of despair solidified in the morning light. He deserved better, not just from her, but from himself. The path forward wasn't yet clear, but the recognition of his own worth shone like a distant beacon, guiding him out of darkness. Chloe watched him, suddenly uncertain in the face of his calm. For the first time since they'd met, Mark felt the power dynamic shift, not because he sought control, but because he had finally recognized his own value. The bathroom had always been Mark's sanctuary, the one place where, even in a shared apartment, he could find true privacy. This morning, he stood before the mirror with new purpose, hands braced on the sink's edge, studying his reflection with unflinching honesty. "Who are you?" he asked his reflection quietly. "Really?" Steam from the shower still clouded the edges of the mirror, but his face remained clear at the center, eyes shadowed from restless nights, expression more serious than he'd seen it in years. "You've been the supportive boyfriend," he continued, reaching for his razor. "The provider, the one who says yes, the one who gives and gives," each statement punctuated by methodical preparation strokes. "But who are you without those roles?" He began shaving with precise, deliberate movements. This daily ritual of self-care suddenly felt symbolic, removing the growth of the past, revealing the clean foundation beneath. "You let someone take advantage of your generosity," he acknowledged, wincing at the truth's sting more than the razors. "You ignored the imbalance because being needed felt like being loved." The realization settled in his chest, painful but clarifying. He'd confused support with self-sacrifice, generosity with self-erasure. What do you actually want? He asked his reflection, rinsing the blade. Not what makes you useful to someone else. What do you want for yourself? The answer came not in words, but in a feeling, a quiet dignity rising within him, a sense of worth independent of what he provided to others. He finished shaving, patted his face dry, and met his own gaze directly. You deserve reciprocity, he told himself firmly. You deserve respect. And it's time you showed that to yourself first. For the first time in months, perhaps years, Mark recognized the man in the mirror, not as Chloe's supporter, but as someone worthy in his own right. With Chloe out at a gallery meeting, a claim Mark no longer took at face value, he settled at the desk in his home office. On the polished surface lay his laptop, financial statements, a legal pad, and a stack of neatly organized folders containing 3 years of records. This wasn't an emotional exercise, but a factual assessment. As a financial consultant, Mark understood the value of objective analysis. Today, he would apply those same skills to his relationship. He created a spreadsheet titled Relationship Balance Sheet, dividing it into columns: financial contributions, household responsibilities, emotional investment, and future planning. Under each, he listed specific items with estimated values or time commitments. Financial contributions revealed the starkest imbalance. Mark had paid 100% of the rent for their shared apartment, his apartment legally speaking, for 3 years. Utilities, groceries, insurance, all covered by him. Even Chloe's cell phone remained on his plan. He calculated the total: over $87,000 in direct support. Household responsibilities showed a similar pattern. Mark handled approximately 70% of cleaning, 80% of cooking, and nearly all maintenance and repairs. He tracked hours spent, noting Chloe's contributions diminished steadily over time, while his increased emotional investment proved harder to quantify, but no less revealing. He listed conversations initiated, compromises made, support offered during difficult times. Again, the pattern showed Mark giving substantially more than he received. Future planning told the final story. While Mark had discussed marriage, shared goals, and retirement planning, Chloe had consistently deflected or changed the subject. When finished, Mark sat back and reviewed the data dispassionately. The numbers didn't lie. What he'd experienced as minor imbalances in individual moments revealed themselves as a systematic pattern when viewed comprehensively. This wasn't a partnership. It was a one-sided arrangement where he provided nearly everything while receiving little in return. The revelation didn't bring anger. He'd moved beyond that, but rather a clear-eyed understanding. The relationship as it existed was fundamentally unsustainable. No amount of love or commitment could balance such profound inequity unless both parties acknowledged and addressed it. Mark closed the spreadsheet and opened a new document. It was time to plan his response. As evening settled over the apartment, Mark arranged his materials on the dining table. Legal documents, account statements, a notepad filled with methodical lists, and his laptop displaying a carefully crafted timeline. Each item represented a boundary he would establish, not out of vengeance, but from self-respect. Step 1, he murmured, highlighting the first item on his list. Financial separation. He drafted emails to his bank requesting removal of Chloe's access to his accounts and credit cards. Not immediately. He wasn't cruel, but with a 2-week notice to allow her time to make arrangements. He scheduled the changes, then moved to the next item. Step 2, living arrangements. The apartment lease was in his name alone, a fact that simplified matters considerably. He drafted a formal letter establishing a reasonable time frame for Chloe to find new accommodations. 30 days, more than generous given the circumstances. He considered the legal requirements, ensuring his approach was both fair and legally sound. "I'm not throwing her out," he reminded himself. "I'm establishing necessary boundaries." Next came utilities, subscription services, and insurance policies, each requiring specific actions to disentangle their lives. Mark documented each step methodically, creating a comprehensive implementation plan with specific dates and actions. The most difficult decision involved Chloe's art supplies and exhibition funding. After careful consideration, Mark decided to honor his commitment to her upcoming show. He wouldn't sabotage her professional opportunity, but would establish a clear endpoint for his financial involvement. This isn't about punishment, he told himself, reviewing the plan. It's about creating healthy boundaries that respect both of us. The irony wasn't lost on him. Chloe had demanded the freedom to explore relationships with others, maintaining his financial support. Instead, she would receive true independence, the freedom to make her own way without his resources, just as she was free to pursue relationships without his emotional investment. By midnight, the plan was complete, comprehensive, fair, and measured. Mark gathered the documents into a folder, a weight lifting from his shoulders. Tomorrow would bring difficult conversations and likely resistance, but tonight he'd reclaimed something essential: his self-respect and the conviction to protect it. For the first time since discovering Chloe's deception, Mark felt not just clarity, but genuine hope, not for salvaging a broken relationship, but for building a life that honored his own worth. Mark's day began at 8:30 a.m. sharp at First National Bank. The personal banker's office was understated but professional, neutral territory for the first step in reclaiming his financial autonomy. "I'd like to remove an authorized user from my accounts," Mark explained, sliding his ID across the desk. The banker nodded professionally. "We can certainly help with that." "Which accounts are we discussing?" "All of them. Checking, savings, and credit cards." As the banker processed his request, Mark maintained a composed exterior despite the gravity of what he was doing. This wasn't impulsive. It was the implementation of a carefully considered plan. Next came the credit card companies. One by one, Mark called each provider, navigating automated systems and explaining his situation to representatives. He requested immediate removal of Chloe's authorized user status, declining offers to simply reduce her spending limits. "Complete removal, please," he repeated firmly. By noon, he'd moved to digital subscriptions, streaming services, delivery accounts, membership programs, methodically changing passwords and removing payment information. Each action was recorded in his implementation checklist, a growing record of reclaimed independence. The apartment lease required an in-person visit to the management office. "I need to clarify that my partner is not authorized to renew or modify our agreement," he explained to the property manager, who updated their records without question. At the locksmith, Mark hesitated briefly before requesting the apartment locks be rekeyed. This felt more personal, more final than financial boundaries. After a moment's reflection, he proceeded. Security wasn't vindictiveness. It was self-protection. His final stop was a storage facility, where he secured a small unit. There he carefully stored irreplaceable items, family heirlooms, important documents, items of significant personal value, removing them from potential leverage or damage. By late afternoon, Mark had systematically severed every financial connection that Chloe might exploit. Each step had been taken without anger, without malice, simply the methodical implementation of necessary boundaries. Back in his car, he reviewed his checklist, every item marked complete. Now came the harder part, awaiting Chloe's reaction when she discovered the new reality he'd created. Mark was preparing dinner when he heard Chloe's key in the lock. He continued chopping vegetables, bracing himself for what would come. The first indication was a muffled exclamation from the entryway, followed by the sound of her trying the key again. Then came footsteps, rapid and forceful. "My key doesn't work." Chloe stood in the kitchen doorway, confusion giving way to indignation. "And my card was declined at lunch. What's going on?" Mark set down his knife and turned to face her. "I've made some changes to reflect our new situation." "What new situation?" Her voice rose. "What are you talking about?" "I've removed your access to my financial accounts. I've also had the locks changed. I'll give you a new key for now, but you'll need to find your own place within 30 days. Chloe stared at him, incredulous. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious." His voice remained calm. You wanted freedom to explore other relationships. I'm giving you complete freedom, including financial independence. This is cruel, Mark. You know I can't afford. I've supported you completely for 3 years, he interrupted gently. That arrangement was based on mutual commitment. You've changed the terms. I never said I wanted to leave you. She stepped closer, voice softening. I just wanted to explore. While maintaining access to my resources, I found the emails with Alex, Chloe. I know about the apartment hunting, the financial planning for your exit. Color drained from her face. You went through my private emails. Your messages appeared on your laptop when you were in the shower. But that's not the point. The point is, you were planning to use me financially while establishing your new life. That's not fair. Tears welled in her eyes. I've contributed in other ways. My art, my presence. You're right. Relationships aren't just about money. But they are about honesty and mutual respect, neither of which you've shown. Mark maintained his distance despite her tears. I'm not throwing you out tonight. You have 30 days, which is more than generous given the circumstances. I'll tell everyone how cruel you're being. She threatened, anger replacing tears. You can't just cut me off without warning. You're free to tell people whatever you want. The truth is, I've supported you completely while you plan to leave me. Now, I'm simply establishing appropriate boundaries. What about my exhibition, my supplies? You promised. I'll honor my commitment to your upcoming show, he said. That payment has already been made. But moving forward, you'll need to fund your own career. Chloe's expression hardened. You think you can just decide all this unilaterally? The irony of that statement isn't lost on me, Mark replied quietly. Wasn't it you who unilaterally decided to change our relationship? She had no response to that, only a glare before she stormed from the kitchen. Moments later, Mark heard the guest room door slam. He returned to chopping vegetables, hands steady despite the confrontation. The worst was over, or so he thought. The fallout began the next morning with a text from their mutual friend Rachel. Just heard from Chloe. Are you really kicking her out? That seems harsh. Mark crafted a measured response. There's more to the story. I've given her 30 days and am covering her exhibition costs. Rachel's reply came quickly. She's devastated, Mark. Maybe you two should talk this through? Similar messages followed throughout the day. Some friends immediately took Chloe's side. Never thought you'd be so heartless, wrote one. Others reserved judgment. Sounds complicated. Want to grab coffee and talk? His colleague David caught him at lunch. Heard you and Chloe hit rough waters. Word travels fast, Mark observed. She called Rachel crying this morning. Said you changed the locks and cut off her money without warning. Mark sighed. Did she mention she was planning to leave me while continuing to use my financial support? David's eyebrows rose. No. That detail was omitted. I found emails outlining her exit strategy. I'm not preventing her from pursuing what she wants. I'm just not financing it. Makes sense to me, David nodded, though some people might not see it that way. That evening Chloe's sister called, her voice tight with controlled anger. Chloe told me what you did. After everything she's sacrificed for your relationship, what exactly has she sacrificed, Jennifer? Mark asked quietly. Her independence, her 20s. She could have been living her own life instead of building one with you. The life she built with me was entirely funded by me. Now she wants to explore relationships with others while maintaining my financial support. That's her art career you're sabotaging. I've paid for every supply, every exhibition, every class for 3 years. I'm still covering her upcoming show. The conversation ended in a stalemate, but it was just the beginning. Over the next few days, social pressure mounted from unexpected directions. Even Mark's mother called, concerned about rumors she'd heard. You've always been so generous, Mark. This doesn't sound like you. Sometimes boundaries are necessary, Mom. The real shock came 1 week after implementing his plan. Mark returned home to find a legal envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was a letter from Chloe's newly retained attorney, claiming unlawful eviction and financial abandonment. demanding immediate restoration of access and threatening further legal action. Mark stared at the document, a complex mixture of emotions rising within him. He'd expected resistance, even anger, but legal threats were an escalation he hadn't anticipated. For the first time since implementing his plan, doubt flickered. Was he prepared for a legal battle? Could her claims have merit? He placed the letter on his desk, took a deep breath, and reached for his phone. It was time to secure legal counsel of his own. The mediation room was understated, neutral tones, a polished conference table, water carafes at measured intervals. Mark sat on one side with his attorney, Elena Vasquez, her posture relaxed but alert. Across from them, Chloe fidgeted beside her own lawyer, a man whose expensive suit seemed designed to intimidate. "Let's begin," the mediator said, a woman in her 50s with decades of experience etched in the lines around her eyes. "We're here to address claims of unlawful eviction and financial abandonment brought by Mrs. Warren against Mr. Bennett." Chloe's attorney leaned forward. "My client was abruptly denied access to her home and financial resources without proper notice, creating significant hardship and emotional distress." "I'd like to clarify several points," Elena countered calmly. "First, the apartment is solely in Mr. Bennett's name, with Mrs. Warren never contributing to rent or utilities. Second, all financial accounts are Mr. Bennett's property, with Mrs. Warren added only as an authorized user. Third, Mr. Bennett has provided 30 days' notice regarding living arrangements, which exceeds legal requirements for non-tenants. The mediator turned to Chloe's attorney. "Does your client dispute these facts?" "The arrangement was understood differently," he insisted. "My client contributed significantly to the relationship in non-financial ways. There was an implied contract. We've provided documentation of all financial transactions." Elena interrupted. "Sliding a folder across the Mr. Bennett has covered 100% of shared expenses for 3 years, totaling over $87,000. We've also provided evidence that Mr. Warren was planning to leave the relationship while continuing to access Mr. Bennett's resources." The mediator reviewed the documents, her expression remaining neutral. "Ms. Warren, did you have a formal agreement regarding these financial arrangements?" Chloe shifted uncomfortably. "It was understood. I supported Mark's career by maintaining our home, and the documentation shows Mr. Bennett handled approximately 70% of household responsibilities as well," Elena noted. "And these emails?" The mediator held up printed copies of Chloe's correspondence with Alex. "Those were private," Chloe protested, color rising in her cheeks. "They're also quite explicit about your intentions," the mediator observed. "You discuss maintaining access to Mr. Bennett's financial support while establishing a relationship with someone else." Chloe's attorney attempted to redirect. "Regardless of personal matters, my client requires proper notice and transition, which she has received." The mediator concluded, setting down the papers. "Mr. Bennett has acted within his legal rights. The apartment is his property. The accounts are his property. He has provided reasonable notice for Ms. Warren to make alternative arrangements." Mark maintained his composure as the mediator continued. "I see no grounds for claims of unlawful eviction or financial abandonment. Mr. Bennett has acted legally, and I would add quite fairly under the circumstances." The defeat in Chloe's posture was evident as the mediator wrapped up the proceedings. Mark felt no triumph, only a quiet validation that boundaries when based in truth and fairness would be respected even by the legal system. "You should have seen her face when the mediator dismissed her claims," David said, sliding a coffee across the table to Mark. Their regular cafe felt especially comfortable after the tension of recent weeks. "Rachel told me Chloe expected to get at least half your savings." Mark shook his head. "It was never about taking anything from her, just protecting what's mine." "Well, apparently she owes her lawyer a pretty penny. Contingency case gone wrong." Mark sipped his coffee without comment. He didn't need to know about Chloe's financial troubles. "She posted something on social media last night," David continued, scrolling through his phone. "Something about toxic relationships and financial control. A few people liked it, but most aren't buying it." The tides turned. I don't need public vindication, Mark said quietly. Maybe not, but you're getting it anyway. Lisa finally spoke up about what really happened. How Chloe was seeing this Alex guy while pretending everything was fine with you. Mark raised an eyebrow. Lisa told people? Apparently, Chloe tried to get Lisa to lie for her during the mediation. Lisa refused and decided to set the record straight. The information settled over Mark without the satisfaction he might have expected months ago. Justice was happening naturally without his intervention. Later that week, Rachel called to check in. I owe you an apology, she began. I should have gotten your side before jumping to conclusions. It's okay, Mark assured her. Loyalty to friends is important. The thing is, Rachel hesitated. Chloe's been asking to stay with us until she gets back on her feet. Jason isn't comfortable with it, especially after everything we've learned. That's between you and her, Mark said carefully. The exhibition opening is tomorrow, Rachel continued. Are you going? I paid for it, seems fair to see the result. That's remarkably gracious. The gallery was crowded when Mark arrived the following evening. He stayed near the back, observing without intruding. Chloe's artwork was genuinely good. He'd always believed in her talent. What caught his attention, however, was her interaction with the gallery owner. Tense, awkward, clearly strained. An art critic Mark recognized approached him. Quite the drama behind the scenes with this one, she remarked. The artist apparently promised exclusive rights to 2 different galleries. Now neither wants to work with her. Mark nodded politely without commenting. Another natural consequence of Chloe's approach to relationships, professional ones this time. As he prepared to leave, he overheard a conversation. Chloe was planning to relocate out of state. Fresh start, someone said. Her boyfriend Alex got a job offer in Colorado. The news brought Mark no pleasure, no pain, just a sense of appropriate closure. The chapter was ending naturally, without vindictiveness, through the simple consequences of choices made. 6 months after the mediation, Mark sat across from Rebecca at their favorite bistro, the spring sunshine warming the outdoor patio. She laughed at something he'd said, the sound genuine and warm. You're overthinking again, she observed, reaching for her water glass. I can see it in your expression. Hazard of my profession, Mark admitted. Financial consultants live in spreadsheets. And what's in today's mental spreadsheet? He considered her question. Rebecca was different from Chloe in countless ways, but perhaps most significantly in how she engaged with him, directly, honestly, with genuine interest. Just appreciating how different this feels, he said finally. Rebecca nodded, understanding immediately. He'd been open about his past relationship from their first meeting at a friend's dinner party 3 months ago. Different how, she asked. Not defensive, but curious. Balanced, he replied. I ordered dinner last time. You insisted on this one. I fixed your leaky faucet. You helped organize my chaotic bookshelf. It's just reciprocal. Relationship should be, she said simply. That's the baseline, not some extraordinary achievement. A comfortable silence settled between them as they enjoyed their meal. Rebecca was a pediatric nurse with a straightforward approach to life that Mark found refreshing. She valued his generosity, but never exploited it, offering her own in equal measure. I heard Chloe's show in Denver got good reviews, Rebecca mentioned. That's good. She's talented. You're allowed to be glad for her success without wanting her back in your life. Mark smiled. When did you get so wise? Nursing teaches you a lot about human nature, she said, and about healing. Speaking of which, how's that hobby project coming along? The woodworking. Finally finished the bedside table. It's not perfect, but it's solid. That's what matters in the end, Rebecca said. Building something that lasts. As they walked back to his car, Mark reflected on how far he'd come. The pain of betrayal had transformed into something valuable, a deeper understanding of himself, of what he deserved in relationships, of the importance of boundaries rooted in self-respect. Rebecca's hand found his, their fingers interlacing naturally. There was no rush, no pressure, just 2 people building something thoughtfully. with mutual care and consideration. "I'm glad I met you," he said simply. "I'm glad you were ready to meet me," she replied, the insight striking him with its truth. The evening air carried the scent of new beginnings, not the intoxicating rush of infatuation, but something steadier and more enduring, the quiet confidence of knowing his worth and finding someone who recognized it too. The evening light softened the edges of Mark's back porch as he and Rebecca sat side by side, watching fireflies emerge in the garden he'd planted last spring. A year had passed since the mediation, 18 months since Chloe's text message had shattered his world and, unexpectedly, set him free. "Your sister asked an interesting question today," Mark said, breaking the comfortable silence. "She wanted to know if I regretted those 3 years with Chloe." Rebecca turned to him, curious. "And what did you tell her?" "That pain can be a powerful teacher if we're willing to learn from it." He smiled, watching a firefly blink near the rosemary bush. "I don't regret the experience because I wouldn't be who I am without it." "And who is that?" Rebecca asked, her hand finding his on the porch swing. "Someone who understands that love without boundaries isn't really love at all." Mark's voice carried the quiet certainty of hard-won wisdom. "Real love honors both people's dignity. It doesn't diminish either person to elevate the other." A breeze stirred the wind chimes Rebecca had brought when she'd moved in 3 months ago, another symbol of their balanced partnership. "The strangest part," Mark continued, "is realizing that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's actually the most loving thing you can do for yourself and the other person. It prevents enabling behaviors that ultimately harm both of you." "That's wisdom most people spend lifetimes trying to learn," Rebecca observed. "Most painful lessons are like that," Mark agreed. "They seem unbearable in the moment, but eventually you realize they were necessary for growth." As darkness settled around them, Mark reflected on his journey from the shock of betrayal through the darkness of despair to the dawn of self-discovery. The path hadn't been easy, but it had led him to this moment of quiet contentment, to a relationship built on mutual respect and genuine reciprocity. "Some people never learn those lessons," Rebecca said softly. "Everyone has their own journey," Mark replied without judgment. "Mine taught me that we're all responsible for our own choices and their consequences, and that true partnership requires both freedom and responsibility, independence and commitment." The fireflies continued their luminous dance in the garden, symbols of light emerging from darkness, of beauty born from transformation, of hope restored through wisdom rather than naivety.